Hi everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Pour. I'm Jordan.
And I'm Brian.
And we're here with Ted Huber, the master distiller at Starlight Distillery.
Well, thanks for having me today, guys.
Yeah, this is awesome. Brian and I have helped Keith with Vic's Liquor Store do a barrel pick here today, and Ted was so kind to sit down with us, so we really appreciate that, Ted. And I'll let you first talk about what's in our glass.
Well, great. Well, thank you all for coming again. And so actually, this is a beautiful day here in late March, sunny outside. So warehouses are starting to warm up. So you see we're in long sleeves. It's slightly chilly in here, but perfect temperature for doing barrel picks today. So thanks again for coming down. But today we're tasting a 7-year-old 3-grain mash bill bourbon from Starlight Distillery here that is being put into a really unusual barrel. So this barrel was originally put in service in France and Calvados in the 1940s. It has been used repeatedly since the 1940s, but we shipped it over here with 25-year-old Calvados in it. And then the Calvados was obviously taken back out and bottled, and then we put the 7-year bourbon back into it that's been in there right now for about a year. So we're getting this really beautiful apple kind of pear character into the nose. In fact, the 7-year bourbon is getting a little bit past the youthful stage now into more of its midlife. So we get some nice complexity from the bourbon, but it's really rounded out with this beautiful Calvados apple pear kind of character.
I mean, just a great nose.
Really nice for this time of year now. It's kind of warming out here because we've been about the 60s in this warehouse right now. So it's a perfect temperature to be sipping on bourbon.
And this is incredible. Brian, I don't know about you, but I get a good fair amount. You talked about apple. That comes forward, some cinnamon.
I got the pear on the nose, and then I got the pear on the palate as well.
It's good and fruitful. So, Ted, what we were wanting to talk to you about today, too, is just a little bit about Starlight. I think you guys have been producing bourbon for a little bit longer than people might expect, but the Huber Winery, Starlight Distillery, and the Huber name go back quite a ways. So walk us through quickly the lineage that you know about how Ted ended up sitting here, right?
Well, this goes way back to Germany. Years and years ago, our family lived on the Rhine River. We had a very large farm, very large fruit farm in Baden, Germany. Which we had, we made brandies over there, we had vineyards and wine operation in Germany. And so in the 1830s, as Southern Indiana was progressing as the wine capital of the United States, Simon Huber, which is my great-great-great-grandfather, came over and then bought this particular farm in 1843 that we're on right now, and planted vineyards, planted apples, a lot of blackberries, strawberries, and a lot of fruit. And obviously with fruit production back then, you had obviously wine and distillation process because of in the 1800s there wouldn't have been a lot of refrigeration and transportation. So processing was done on the farm at that particular time. And so then we jumped through generations and generations, and the farm has remained in this family and has remained as one of Indiana's, in current today, Indiana's largest fruit producing farm. And again, it goes back over 180 years. And when you look out of these rickhouses and at the distillery, you see apples, you see peaches, lots of blackberry fields here, pretty close to where we're at right here in this particular. And on this side of the wall actually is a vineyard. On the other side of this, that's used for our grape brandies. This particular variety is used for our grape brandies here. So everywhere, pivoting anywhere around these rickhouses, distillery, winery, are fruit production that feeds into. And that's kind of how we really got started back in 1998. Going back then, we really pushed the General Assembly in Indianapolis to let us expand the winery and to be able to do ports and make brandies and things that our family traditionally did for over a century. And since Prohibition, those laws just didn't really let us do much in Indiana.
They weren't updated.
They weren't updated. They came back in Prohibition. We had those old Prohibition laws, and they really didn't have what we wanted to do as far as having customers here doing barrel picks like you're doing. And, the whole visitation, those laws weren't put in place for that. So like anything in our General Assembly and politics, you got to hear about it, talk about it for several years before things get done. And that's the process that we live in here in the United States, which is a great process. Everybody gets to put their time in and talk about it. So for 1998, the first time I introduced that bill, all the way till 2001, it kind of got talked about, and finally said, okay, we think it's a good thing for Indiana, but I don't know about making these whiskeys and making these vodkas and these other products. You're all the big farm, you're a winery, let's make brandy. And so in 1998, the original bill had a nice big artisan about making all kind of craft whiskeys and everything, but it was narrowed in 2001 to brandy only.
Which lends to you because brandy's from grape.
It's for grapes and apples and strawberries and all the other stuff that we had. So, it's...
But your vision was beyond just doing
that.
brandies. Was it always bourbon?
It was always bourbon because obviously we're 25 minutes from Louisville, Kentucky. Indiana's known for corn and not really known for grapes outside of here. But,
And you're a bourbon guy.
And we're a bourbon guy. Right. And so, it was okay. And the General Assembly of AR said, well, we'll crack this. We'll crack this door a little bit, and you do a good job. Come back to us in a couple of years, show that it can be successful, and then we'll look at expanding the law. And then unfortunately, the governor at that time was Frank O'Bannon, who was our governor who passed away in office. And so he didn't get to really see the bill all the way to what he wanted and envisioned it to be, and we wanted and envisioned it to be. And literally, most of the people in the General Assembly at that time really envisioned it being what it is today. How many distilleries, in the investment into the state, using agricultural products that Indiana's already known for, value adding those agricultural products into something that people can come visit, taste and enjoy, see the fields, drive through the fields, touch and feel and everything.
Right. How many Hubers of the Huber family are involved with this business between the winery, the distillery, the farmers market, everything? If you all haven't ever been here before, Huber Winery, Starlight Distillery has a distillery, winery, there's a farmer's market, they've got an ice cream shop, they've got a tasting room upstairs, they've got a wedding reception venue. I'm probably missing something, but a lot here. So how many of the Huber family?
A lot of family-friendly things here. So I'm sixth generation. The fifth generation, we have several of them still living here.
Cool.
They're somewhat active still with little things going on here in the property, but they're kind of sunsetting with their age and enjoying their retirement and moving on. So in my generation, my wife and I and my partner and his wife are still very active in the company. And then the generation behind us, Generation 7, there are 5 of those that are very active in the company. 2 being my sons. One is very active in the participation today, like their barrel pick, very much in the marketing, PR side of that, out in distribution, assists a lot in distilling, and my youngest son is really hands-on production. So if you come and you do a tour, you see one of the boys around, he's going to be somewhere in a winery, the distillery, the brandy distillery, or somewhere through that production.
I think we met him out there.
Yeah.
So when did you personally know that you wanted to get into the business, and when did you start getting the passion for?
Well, I joined my father in the wine cellar at 12.
Okay.
Very early on.
You knew pretty early, huh?
Pretty early on, and joined Dad on the harvest of the wine and the whole vineyard operation, the whole life cycle of a winery, with spring, with the vineyards just budding out right now out in the vineyards, the whole life cycle of a vineyard and harvest, barreling and everything like that. It's a great industry to be in because you create something from Mother Nature all the way into where somebody can enjoy it all the way through. And whiskey and brandies are exactly the same way. And you come out here, we're hopefully in about 2 weeks, you'll see that we have a lot of tractors working right now, as you can see, but we're not planting yet. It's a little cold and a little wet yet in the farm, but we're about 2 weeks away where the weather looks like. We'll be dropping our first corn seed into the ground for the whiskey. And then right now, those little lush little fields of lush green you see out there, that's rye. Already up out of the ground, and that rye, when the temperature gets up just a little bit more, those fields will be waving with the beautiful rye fields out here.
All of your product, is it in-house?
Currently with the size of the advancement of equipment and sizing of what we've done right now, we just finished up with our corn. The previous several years, we were able to grow everything and produce everything and have enough corn. With the size of the new still or continuous column, we had just ran out of corn. So we're now corn not from our farm, it's from our neighbor's farm down the road. And our farm is limited to the size we're farming currently right now. We own about 700 plus acres and rent some farms. So we have about 1,000 acres total, which isn't enough to support what we're currently
This is
doing.
really good whiskey that you make,
That's a good
right?
problem to have.
So we're
Yeah.
partnering with farms in Starlight, Indiana. So we're trying to keep everything.
So it's
as
either,
local.
so it's basically, it's either grain to glass from here at Huber or their neighbors. So this is Indiana bourbon in a glass.
Yeah. So when you drive around the fields right now, down the road around, you'll see wheat fields. Currently, wheat is something that we don't make a lot of. We make great wheat whiskey. It's some available today, but it's something we don't make as a general whiskey. But the wheat fields down the road are our wheat fields. They're not on our personal property, but they're being grown for us. Like I said, right now, rye, all the rye around us right now are our fields.
Right.
We're doing rye picks for that right now.
Right.
So we have another barrel pick just came in. You heard the door come in. So.
Yeah. So by now you probably realize that we ran out of battery, but that's okay. Ted was so kind to let us change that battery out and walk actually down to Rickhouse 3.
This is Rickhouse 3.
Rickhouse 3. So we were in Rickhouse
2,
which had how many barrels?
It's about 2,500 in that one.
And how many was in 3?
This one here is about 5,000 in this one.
And then there was an additional
There's
one.
another one next to us. It's about 4,000. And then the next one will hold about 8,000.
Yeah.
So right now, currently we're actually shoved a little fuller than we should be. So we're sitting at about 12,000 barrels here right now. But we're a little over capacity as we're waiting for the next rick house to be finished, which should be finished in about 3 weeks.
Okay.
It's all that under construction.
Yeah, it's under construction.
Yeah. So one thing that while we were walking between rick houses here that I really like that you had said is that we were talking just about prices and values of whiskeys, and that you as a family and as a farm to glass kind of operation, that you're really focused on providing a high quality at a good price. So let's expand on that a little bit. Tell me what you really mean by
the
that.
fact that we're fully integrated all the way through for the ag all the way through, we feel like we could make a higher quality because we control all aspects. For the agriculture, there's really no transportation. We know what we're dealing with long before we ever make it, make good quality decisions on what we need to do. Plus the fact that all the rick houses are on property, and they're all within fork truck. We don't even load them on trucks to move them around. Everything's here, and bottling, everything is done right here on property. Cut out a lot of different middlemen and different things like that. So we can bring a very high quality whiskey or brandy right to the market and keep it reasonably priced. Versus some other people who are having to buy bought whiskey and at the open market whiskey as they're trying to do in prices and dealing with other issues with this. But here, since we're controlling everything, we can keep our prices. And if you find most Starlights are going to be in the $49 to $79 price point for most of our normal products that hit the market.
Yeah, pretty comfortable pricing. And what do you think the future of bourbon is, and the future for bourbon at Starlight is? What do you kind of, we walked by the expansion, but what do you think the future of the market is?
I think people are really looking for the finishes have been real hot for the last 4 or 5 years. That's what we're trying right here. One of these, the Scotch market has been doing that for decades, a lot longer than decades.
Centuries, right?
Centuries.
Yeah.
And along those lines, and just interesting mash bills. We here at Starlight release a lot of heirloom corns. So we grow, since we're growing it, we can invest into growing some Bloody Butchers. We have some beautiful blue corns, some white corns, things like that. We grow those varieties to find those. Also, we're experimenting with a lot of fun mash bills. So 3 grain, our standard 3 grain is what we make mostly. That goes into our $35 Carl T bourbon, the nice, easy drinking, smooth. But we're getting ready to do 4 grain next week.
Okay. Now, is that a normal mash bill that you release? Or
Our 3 grains are normal. That's a lot of our single barrel picks come out that are 3 grain. There's that mash bill. Okay. Our 4 grain we add wheated, so it's a wheated mash bill. Okay. But it's wheated with rye. We haven't really played with a lot of wheated bourbon, heavily wheated bourbon, but with growing as much wheat as we're working with right now, so we're actually going to be starting to work with weeded bourbon, which is exciting. That's 4 or 5 years away.
Sure.
But those are things now with our new still, our new capacity that we're able to do. And again, the fact that this wheat's growing right here, it's close. We're not having to add a lot of value expenses to it. We can hopefully keep this in a $35 to $55 for a nice weeded bourbon coming up.
And one thing, and I'm sure Brian agrees with this, that I'm impressed with Starlight is, you all are technically a smaller distillery, but the offerings that you have. I mean, in your gift shop, there's bonded bourbon, there's bonded rye, there's double oaks, there's honey finishes. So what has kind of motivated you guys to make sure that you offer the amount of varieties that you have?
Well, the unique thing about Starlight Distillery, Huber Wine, and our complex is that last year we generated about 700,000 visitors. So 700, and a lot of our visitors are once or twice a year visitors. We want to make sure we have something interesting on all times. We try to have a 7 or 8 year bourbon, something with some age. The finishes you mentioned, we have some 10 and 12 year brandies up there right now. But we have people who come here all the time. I mean, I'm talking about every other week, several times a month, looking for whatever the new bourbon or new whatever we have finishes that are coming out.
Okay.
So the reason we try to have a lot of unique things constantly rotating through our retail shop is because of that.
Okay.
You witnessed how many tours were walking through the production. This is a March Thursday.
Yeah, it's a Thursday in March.
It's a Thursday in March, and there's tour after tour after tour coming through, and
people were packed for lunch.
The fact that we are so much closer to downtown Louisville than Bardstown, Kentucky, or Frankfort, Kentucky, when people are in for bourbon tourism into Louisville market, we're only 25 minutes from downtown hotels to Starlight. And so we're constantly getting these international and all over the United States people traveling here. And they're looking before they travel to Louisville to see what distillery they want to visit and decide. And then they look what the offerings those distilleries have. You go to Sazerac, you always know what Buffalo, you're heading down to Heaven Hill, what they're... So the same thing for Starlight. They're always looking to see what the offerings that we currently have. Those emails are coming in, do you have this when I'm there, or this or that?
Right.
And so we try to make sure we rotate or at least have some of those products available when somebody's traveling from California or they're traveling from New York or somewhere that they're interested in these products. We want to at least have 1 or 2 of those interesting things.
And everybody's palate's different.
So yes. Jordan and I both being from Indiana, we're familiar with Starlight.
Right.
We've grown up with it being around.
Right.
But what is your distribution nationally?
We have crossed the Mississippi a little west of Missouri, Kansas, and we're starting Iowa this calendar year. But for the most part, we're growing with a new still and a new production, new things like that. But our footprint right now is north to south from Florida all the way to Wisconsin, up and down the East Coast, up and down the Midwest. So you can find our products in most places in this part of the United States right now. But you can go online to some of the online retailers that we're partnered with and find certain offerings in releases that'll show up on those platforms.
And you are, Ted, you're the master distiller here, right?
Currently, yep. I got 2 sons behind me, and we talked about it earlier there. But I got to talk about my team because as you've seen who's working in there right now, Jason's been with us for many, many years, and he is the head distiller for the Brandy Distillery, and that still runs pretty much year-round every single day, making brandies and those type of products. Then we have the whole team in the grain distillery, cranking that still out down in there, and so we're early in the morning to late at night running those columns, and so we put together a really good team. So when you come here at Starlight, you'll see us still running, you'll see some distillers running around everywhere around here, and then also you saw some wine. It's always wine moving through the plant too, so wine's moving through. So
don't forget, they have wine here too. Don't let them fool you.
Tradition in wine.
And they have really, really good wine here too. A lot of people who are in bourbon also like wine. I like wine. Wife likes wine. It really works out well if you visit here because if you're not into spirits, or maybe you're not into bourbon, they have gins, they have vodkas, they have rums, brandies, wines, everything. But
you actually just brought up one of my absolute favorite products up here right now for the springtime. In summer, we have a bottled and bond aged gin.
I saw that on the shelf.
And it is to die for. If
Yeah.
you're a gin and tonic fan, I'm telling you that thing
That's
right
where-
now.
that's where it's at.
Yeah. We make some absolute fantastic gin. Don't make a lot of gin, so you won't find our gin in every store because the Brandy Distillery makes the gin.
Yep.
And it can only make gin when we're not making brandy, which is only about 3 months a year.
Yeah.
So 100% of our gin production is done in this small little window every year, and that's how much we make. And when we run out, we run out. So
Yeah.
it's not widely distributed,
Yeah.
but you can find it in most markets and higher end stores.
Yeah.
Okay.
So from a bourbon standpoint, one thing that we talked about on our barrel pick was how you decide barrels get blended, and then you took us to an area where you said these barrels were just too good. They weren't gonna help the small batch out. They're just kind of too good. We were gonna say, how is that determined? And I know you determine it, right?
Yeah.
And so how do you determine that?
We've got a great team here, and when we're doing these small batches, you saw we're working on a small batch brandy also, those bigger, larger format brandies that look like this. That they're apple brandies that are 11, 12, and 13 years old right now. We're getting ready to do a blend. I think this is an older apple right here, 2015.
Okay.
But they're working on that. So the team, we're going through the initial tastings right now, and then we'll revisit those maybe in a couple days from now, and then we'll start working on our blends. But what we witnessed there on that bourbon that we were tasting was a little larger. So that was actually a 60 plus barrels that were going to be dumped into a small batch. Okay. So we obviously have more barrels than that of the toasted series that we're talking about. And so we went through and picked out the ones that we thought were the best for that blend. And those were all brought into the dumping room and then left there for about a week. And then we opened them all back up and tasted them again. They already made the cut to go into the final blend. But we wanted to pick the ones that were actually going to do the blend the way we wanted to do it. Okay. And so everything was kind of hitting that profile that we're looking at. We had this window that we wanted this flavors to all be in, to shine through for what we were looking at. Also use the puzzle analogy that we want to fill every piece of the puzzle for flavors that we're looking for the toasted series. Okay. So those barrels all previously made that. And so then we started saying, okay, these barrels are really, really, really spectacular. They're almost too good for the blend, and we already have that flavor in the blend. So we kept those barrels out for single barrel picks. Yeah. And so the flavor was already in other barrels or in the blend that we already had dumped, and we didn't need those barrels. So they made the cut for the single barrel picks like you were doing today.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then obviously in the bourbon world, you have to be looking ahead 4 to 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah,
so what is your vision for the future? What are you guys going for? And what direction are you guys going?
So we're very partial to certain cooperages.
Okay.
So we work with 7 different cooperages that we really like. We have long-term contracts with these cooperages. So we literally have barrels bought out with some of these cooperages and wood in their yards that are 5 years from now. Okay. And so you can go visit right now and see the stack of wood. They'll have Starlight on that stack of wood, and those barrels won't be even made for another 5 years. We're doing 5-year air dry staves on those. And not only in this,
not something you hear very often.
Yeah, not only in this country, but also in other countries, we have wood sitting. We have wood sitting for barrels to be made. So we're not just buying barrels; we're buying wood, and then having the staves, and then barrels are being made from those staves years after we've already kind of picked what we want from that. So a lot of
that is insane, folks. Yeah. By the way, that's insane. That blows my mind.
Yeah. So you're looking down these rickhouses, you see a lot of different cooperages, well-known cooperages, maybe some not so well-known cooperages. Yeah. But we really pick our barrel companies that really focus on quality flavors that work with the flavors and quality of what we're doing with Starlight. That's so that's kind of what we're really envisioning. And as you can see with the new plant, all the new expansions that are going on this calendar year, we're ramping production up. Right. Because we're kind of really allocated in almost every state. Okay. So you'll find certain products in almost every state, but maybe not the product that everybody's always looking for. Sure. So we're trying to build up more and more inventory, and we're very partial about not, it is what it is when it comes to our production. And this is what we have to sell, and that's all we have to sell.
And people in the bourbon world are used to that.
Yes.
We're used to being on the hunt for a bottle that we want, and not kind of being able to find it. But
People get frustrated with us and like, we'll go ahead and release it. Well, we don't want to release it. Oh, why don't you release it here? Well, we released it here last year. We didn't release it in Florida last year, so Florida gets it this year. It's like, got to share it around. So that's the decisions that have to be made, and it makes us feel really good that our bourbon's wanted that way.
Sure.
That people were complaining that they don't get it in Chicago, but they're getting it in New York. But, they got it in Chicago last year. New York gets it this year. I mean, it's just what it is.
And I have to say, there's probably good evidence that doesn't surprise me whatsoever, because you've been generous to provide multiple samples today on our barrel pick. It wasn't just the pick that we got to sample. We went through a bunch of different barrels, and everything that we've had, I mean, pretty close to just knocking my socks off good.
Really good stuff.
So be sure, if you are traveling to Kentucky, if you're watching this video, traveling to Kentucky, if you're in Indiana, if you're anywhere nearby, make the trip here to Starlight. It's definitely worth it. The products just, and the thought, I think, that goes behind offering all the varieties to match everybody's palate or somebody's palate is just kind of crazy. And as people who really like bourbon and trying different things, we really
with everything they offer, it's totally different than what you get in Kentucky when you go to distillery there. You get a lot of different offerings, so I think it's really cool.
And as Indiana guys, we're pretty darn proud of Starlight down here. So anyway, I think that's going to wrap up everything for us. Like we always say, when you're with your family and your friends, always share your whiskey.
Cheers.